All right, we're going to talk about physical and chemical changes. A physical change is going to alter material without actually changing the composition. So the reaction can usually be reversed. If you cut a piece of metal, you can put the piece of metal back together. If you melt ice, you can put it back in the freezer and get your solid back. So physical changes aren't changing what the material is, they're just changing how the material looks. You can usually reverse these physical changes. Chemical change, though, you're changing the composition. You're rearranging the molecules that that substance is made of. In this case, energy is either going to be absorbed or released. So things like rotting, okay, if you see a pile of mulch on a cool fall day, you may notice some steam coming off of it. That's because the wood is decomposing. There's a chemical change occurring there and energy is being released. Rusting, you have a nail going from a nice shiny metallic color to this dull reddish color, rusting. So you're actually changing the molecular structure of these compounds. Now, physical and chemical properties. A physical property can be observed without changing the composition. So if you just note the color of something, you didn't change what it was. Melting point. You're not changing what it is by figuring out what temperature it melts at. Its density, odor, color, those are all physical properties. Density is a physical property. And density is the measure of the mass of an object per unit of volume for that object. So density is equal to mass over volume. And there should be a division line here. So it's mass divided by volume. And the unit's going to vary based on the unit that your mass is measured in and the unit that your volume is measured in. So density is going to be a derived unit. It's going to have two different base units in its one unit. So if we look at this example, we have a piece of metal occupying a volume of 25.3 cubic centimeters. And it's weighing 65.2 grams. They want to know what is the density of the metal. So anytime we have a word problem, the first thing we should do is write down the equation or write down our variables. Let's start there. So we have volume, which is going to be V, of 25.3 cubic centimeters. And we have weight. Now, in this case, weight is going to be our mass. So 65.2 grams. And they want to know what is the density. So that's what we're looking for. So since our variables are V, M, and D, we know that our equation is going to be the density equation. Density is equal to mass over volume. Since we're solving for density, in this case, we don't need to rearrange our equation, and we can just plug it in and solve. So mass is 65.2 grams. Volume is 25.3 cubic centimeters. Notice that these two units do not cancel out, so they're both going to be in our final answer. 65.2 divided by 25.3. Now you get this really long decimal in your number. You really need to watch your significant digits though. And in this case, both of these numbers have 3 sig figs. We'll go over that later. So you should only have 3 digits in your final answer. And our final answer is going to be 2.58 grams per cubic centimeter. Okay. Now, this problem says calculate the volume of silver if the silver weighs 7,425.87 grams and the density of silver is 10.5 grams per milliliter. So volume, that's what we're looking for. We're not sure what that is. We have weight, which again is going to be our mass. And they give us density this time. So density is 10.5 grams per milliliter. Okay? So starting with your original equation, D equals M over V, right? It's going to be easier to rearrange the letters than it will be the numbers. So go ahead and start with your original equation and let's rearrange there. Now, we need volume, but volume's down here in a denominator. You can't solve for things in a denominator, so we need to get it out of the denominator. Remember, in order to move things, you have to do the opposite operation. So we're going to multiply both sides by volume. That gets rid of the volume on our right-hand side. Volume's still not by itself, though. Okay? Here's volume times density. So we need to get rid of this density variable, and to do that, we're going to divide. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay? So we end up with volume equals mass over density. Okay? And anytime you do a math problem in this class, you really need to show your work. This manipulation of variables, this is not showing your work. I need to see where you're putting which numbers. Okay? So volume equals mass, which we determined is 7,425.87 grams, divided by density, which they told us is 10.5 grams per milliliter. Okay? So we have grams over grams. That's going to cancel. Now, you always go with the least number of significant digits. So in this case, this guy wins, which has 3. So our final answer is going to have 3 significant digits. So 7,425.87 divided by 10.5. That gives us 707. Now, the only unit we have left here is milliliters, which is in the denominator of a denominator. So that's going to flip it up to the numerator, and that's going to be our final answer. Okay? Now, a chemical property is the ability to undergo a chemical reaction and form a new substance. That substance is going to have to change in order to observe those properties. Flammability, reacting to form hydrogen gas. In order to test for those things, you actually have to do a chemical reaction.